I had no idea how things would unfold when they walked in, but the air was thick with tension. 3 men, 1 room, and a game none of us could escape. It was a quiet evening, the kind of stillness that lingered in the air, almost suffocating, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the silence. I stepped into the room, letting the dim light wash over me. The faint hum of the city outside barely reached my ears, leaving a kind of peaceful isolation that felt strangely comforting. I could feel their eyes on me, even before I looked up. 3 sets of eyes, each with its own curiosity, its own hunger, its own secret waiting to be discovered. I didn't rush. There was no need for haste. I wanted them to feel the tension build, to let the silence wrap around us like a heavy blanket. The air felt thick with anticipation, and I knew I had them where I wanted them. Without a word, I reached for the hem of my dress. The fabric was soft, silky, and it slid easily through my fingers as I pulled it up, over my head, and tossed it aside. No words, just the sound of my breath. Steady and controlled, the soft rustle of fabric, and their eyes, those eyes that watched me like I was something they'd never seen before. I allowed the moment to stretch, to last longer than it should. It was a test, one I knew they wouldn't dare fail. I took a step forward, my movement slow, deliberate. I could hear my heart beating faster with each step. But I kept my pace steady. I was in control here. I reached Jake, the first of the 3 to dare look at me without hesitation, and I leaned in. Our lips met in a kiss, slow, certain, a claim of sorts. I didn't need to ask. I didn't need to say anything. I could already feel the tension in the room, the electric pull between us, and I knew none of them would stop me. Jake pulled me closer, his hands gripping my hips with a force that made my breath catch in my throat. The heat between us was palpable, raw, almost too much to bear, but it was impossible to pull away. There was no tenderness in the way he moved. His kiss was hard, urgent, like he couldn't stop even if he wanted to. The intensity of it all caught me off guard. I'd never known him to be like this. But then again, maybe I never really knew him at all. Something about the way he kissed me felt different, like it was more than just desire. It was almost desperate, wild. His hands, rough but tender at the same time, slid up my back, pressing me deeper into him. I felt the weight of his body against mine, the way his breath quickened with each moment. I couldn't resist. I didn't want to. I moved with him, instinctively, letting the rhythm take over. Each shift, each movement, pushed us both higher, building the tension between us until it felt like it could break at any second. I could feel my pulse and my fingertips in the air between us. It was like we were creating a storm. But neither of us had any idea how to stop it. My breath came in shallow gasps as I arched into him, my body responding to the pull of his. I let go of any thoughts, any hesitations. The only thing that mattered was the moment. The sound of his breath, ragged, urgent, matched the pounding of my heart. It was frantic, overwhelming, like everything else had fallen away. I could feel the heat rise with every passing second, the pressure building in my chest. It was too much. My fingers dug into the sheet, gripping them like a lifeline as I pressed myself against him harder. There was no space left between us, just skin, sweat, and the promise of something dangerous. His grip tightened, pulling me up onto my knees, keeping me steady, his other arm wrapping around my waist as if he was trying to hold me together in this chaos we'd created. I needed the contact. My skin felt like it was on fire, and when I reached back, feeling his strong hand slide down my back, he responded with a low growl, the sound sending a shiver down my spine. For a moment, we stayed like that, our bodies pressed close, neither of us moving. It felt like the world had stopped spinning, like it was just the 2 of us, caught in this wild moment that neither of us could escape. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to choke on, but it was intoxicating. His breath was heavy, his chest rising and falling against my back in a slow, deliberate rhythm that seemed to mirror the pounding of my heart. There was something about him in that moment, something familiar, something that drew me in and terrified me all at once. I wasn't sure if I wanted him to stop or if I wanted him to keep going, push harder, deeper into whatever this was. But something told me we were both teetering on the edge of something we wouldn't be able to control, and maybe we didn't want to. The desire felt too consuming to fight. Then, as if the moment had lasted too long, he pulled away. It wasn't a sudden movement, but a slow withdrawal, like he was reluctant to let go. He dropped beside me onto the bed, his breathing just as uneven as mine. I was still gasping for breath when he finally spoke, his voice low and rough. "This may be a mistake," he said. I turned my head toward him, lips brushing the pillow, but I couldn't find the words to say anything. The air between us still crackled with tension. I wanted to tell him that we were past the point of no return, but I couldn't. I just stared at him, my heart still racing. "Do you regret it?" I whispered, the question barely escaping my lips. He chuckled softly, a sound that seemed to vibrate in his chest, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "No," he said, shaking his head slightly. "But I think my brother Tyler might know something." I froze. His words hung in the air between us, heavy and ominous. Tyler. His brother. The one person I knew had always kept a close eye on both of us, never saying much but always watching. I hadn't noticed it before. But now that Jake had mentioned it, I realized how much Tyler had been around lately. Always in the background, always observing, always so quiet. "I don't think Tyler knows anything," I said, trying to dismiss the feeling growing in my chest. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they weren't true. Tyler was perceptive, maybe too perceptive. And Jake? He wasn't one to shy away from his own feelings, no matter how messy or complicated they got. If anything, he wore them like an open book. And it was impossible to ignore the fact that something was shifting between the three of us. Jake didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned onto his side, facing me, his eyes searching mine, like he was trying to read me, trying to figure out if I knew something he didn't. There was a moment of silence before he finally spoke again. "You're not worried, are you?" he asked. His voice quieter this time, almost hesitant. I shook my head slowly, my fingers tracing the sheets in front of me, avoiding his gaze. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Isn't it more exciting this way?" There it was again, the question hanging in the air, lingering. The way he looked at me like I was some kind of puzzle he couldn't solve. The way he pulled me closer, yet kept a distance, always testing the waters, always unsure. Maybe that's what this was, a test. To see how far we could go without breaking. Without everything falling apart. But deep down, I knew one thing. We were already too far gone. And there was no turning back. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The knock came shortly after. 3 sharp raps on the door, so deliberate, so confident. Each sound seemed to hang in the air, resonating with a certainty that made my pulse quicken. It was Rick, standing in the doorway with that look in his eyes. The one that told me he already knew. Knew something he wasn't supposed to know. Or maybe he had always known. That unsettling, knowing look. It always made me feel like I was being seen in a way I wasn't ready for. He stood there for a moment, lingering in the doorway, as if giving me time to gather my thoughts. But I didn't need any more time. I knew what this was. This was inevitable. Rick was here to confront me. "Morning," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. He didn't bother with pleasantries. He didn't even acknowledge the fact that I wasn't offering him a seat. He was beyond that now. He didn't need an invitation to enter my space. He had already made himself a part of it, whether I liked it or not. His eyes scanned the room, taking everything in. He moved like he already owned the place, like he knew exactly what was going on behind closed doors, even when no one else did. But he didn't sit. No, Rick wasn't here to relax. He was here to force an answer, and that answer was going to come whether I was ready for it or not. "I think it's time we talked," he said, his voice low, controlled. The words hung between us, thick and heavy. He wasn't asking. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a demand, a final word in a conversation we hadn't even started yet. But it felt like the end of something. Point of no return. I folded my arms across my chest, leaning against the door frame. I wanted to appear calm, detached, in control. But there was a tightness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. I wasn't sure if it was anxiety, fear, or something deeper, something buried, but I couldn't ignore it. It was a pressure building up in me, and I could feel it in every breath I took. "About what?" I asked, my voice steady, though I could feel the tremble underneath. I didn't let it show. But it was there. It always was when Rick walked into the room. "About you and Jake," Rick said, taking a step closer. He didn't hesitate, didn't pause to give me a chance to regain control. He was here to stake his claim, to mark this moment as his. "Don't think I haven't noticed the way he looks at you. The way he walks out of here like he hasn't slept in days." His words stung, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of seeing me falter. It was easier this way, keeping my guard up, keeping my face neutral. If I showed any sign of weakness, he'd win. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I stood my ground, my posture unwavering even though inside I felt like I was falling apart. Maybe he hasn't, I said, my tone calm, almost bored. I wanted him to think I wasn't bothered by this, that it didn't matter. But the truth was it did. It mattered more than I could put into words. Rick's gaze hardened, and for the first time I saw the real anger flash in his eyes. The kind of anger that wasn't just about the situation. No, it was something more personal, something deeper, something I hadn't seen in him before. It wasn't just about Jake. It was about me. It was about the space I had been taking up in his life without ever acknowledging it. "You think I haven't noticed?" he repeated, his voice sharper now, like a blade cutting through the tension in the room. I stepped closer to him, just enough to feel the heat from his body, the warmth radiating off of him like a force that could melt everything around us. It was uncomfortable, that proximity, but I didn't pull back. Not this time. This time I had something to prove. "I don't care what you've noticed," I said, my voice dropping low, almost a whisper, but still loud enough for him to hear the challenge in it. "But you should care about the fact that you're still here, standing in front of me." The words hung in the air between us, a challenge, a provocation, a dare. I could see the muscles in his jaw twitch, his fingers tightening into fists at his sides. But he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes, louder than any words could have. We stood there, just inches apart, the air thick with unspoken things. The room felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in on us, pushing us together. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when we had come this far. Rick's lips parted, but before he could speak, I reached up, brushing my fingers against his chest. Just enough to feel the rise and fall of his breath under my touch. The simple contact sent a shiver through me, but I didn't let it show. I wanted him to feel it too. The connection, the tension, the pull that was almost impossible to ignore. He looked down at my hand, his eyes darkening with something I couldn't quite name. But before I could read him, he stepped back slightly, breaking the moment between us. For a second, I thought he was going to walk out, leave me standing there with all the words unsaid. But then he straightened up, his gaze never leaving mine. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Not until we figure this out." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. But I wasn't sure if I was calming down, or if I was just getting ready for the storm that was about to hit. Rick didn't say anything for a long moment. Instead, he stared at me, his eyes searching mine as if looking for something I hadn't given him yet. The weight of his gaze pressed against me, like he could see through the walls I had carefully built around myself. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. We stood in silence, neither of us moving, but the tension between us was thick enough to suffocate anyone else in the room. His eyes, dark and intense, never left mine, as if waiting for something, a sign, a word, something to break the quiet that stretched between us. I could feel the pulse of anticipation in the air, the way it hummed around us like a storm gathering its strength. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before, but there was an edge to it, an uncertainty I wasn't used to hearing from him. "Are you here to stop this?" I didn't answer right away. I let the question hang in the air for a moment, weighing it, feeling it slide into the space between us. The words were simple, but the meaning behind them was anything but. It was a question that cut deeper than he realized. Was I here to stop this? I wasn't sure. I didn't know if I wanted to stop it. Instead of answering, I reached out, my hand moving of its own accord, my fingers brushing against the bare skin of his arm. Just enough contact to send a jolt of electricity through the space between us. Enough to ignite the spark that had been building since he walked through that door. My touch was light, almost tentative, but it was enough to draw his gaze to my fingers, to the way they lingered on his skin for a fraction of a second longer than was strictly necessary. I felt the tension in his body, how rigid he was, how his breath caught for a second. "Or are you just tired of being left out?" I whispered, the words slipping from my lips before I could stop them. It wasn't a question I expected him to answer. It wasn't even a question, really. It was a challenge. A dare. His lips parted, like he was about to respond, but I didn't wait for him. I couldn't. The air between us was too charged, too full of everything we hadn't said to each other. So instead of waiting for him to speak, I leaned in, closing the distance between us in one smooth, deliberate motion. My lips brushed against his in a kiss that was slow, teasing, full of promise. I could feel him stiffen at first, the moment of hesitation. As if he was waiting for something, maybe for me to pull back, for him to stop it before it went too far. But I didn't pull away. Not this time. I didn't want to. I let my lips linger against his. A silent invitation. He didn't pull away. He didn't hesitate. His hands found their way to my waist before I even knew what was happening, and just like that, everything changed. His kiss deepened. His body pressing closer to mine, the urgency that had been simmering beneath the surface now bubbling over. There was no room for doubt, no space for hesitation. It was like we had both crossed a line that couldn't be undone. I could feel the heat of his touch, the way his hands moved over my body, pulling me closer, claiming me in ways that words couldn't. I didn't stop him. I couldn't. This was what I had wanted, what I had been leading us toward. This moment. The passion, the tension, the unpredictability of it all. The way it felt like the world was shifting around us and there was no going back from it. Not for him. Not for me. Not for either of us. His hand slid down my back, urging me toward the couch. I stumbled back a little, the force of his movements catching me off guard, but I didn't resist. I let him lead me, just as I had planned, just as I had wanted. My heart raced. But it wasn't out of fear. It was out of exhilaration, out of something far more powerful than either of us had expected. We reached the couch. And he pushed me down onto it gently but with a force that left no room for refusal. I didn't fight it. I didn't want to fight it. I wanted to feel this, feel the weight of him above me. Feel the power of the moment that had been building for so long. I arched up into him as he leaned down, his lips finding mine again, deeper this time, more insistent. His hands moved over my body. Like he couldn't get enough of me, like the need between us had suddenly exploded into something that neither of us could control. It was frantic, messy, and full of everything we hadn't said. Everything we hadn't done. I could feel the way his breath quickened, his chest rising and falling against mine as his lips moved to my neck. I tilted my head back, giving him access. And his hands roamed down my body, tracing the outline of my skin, feeling me, marking me. Every touch was a statement, every kiss a promise. And still, there was that part of me that wanted to stop. That wanted to push him away and ask all the questions I hadn't asked. Was this just about desire? Was it something more? But I didn't ask. I couldn't. Not now. Not when the air between us was thick with everything we had never said, everything we had never acknowledged. I could feel him shifting above me, the weight of him pressing me into the cushions, the sound of his breath heavy in the silence that followed. His hands were on me, but there was something almost tender in the way he touched me now, like he was trying to slow things down, trying to savor the moment, even though everything had already unraveled. "Are you sure about this?" he murmured, his voice rough against my skin. It was the first time he had spoken since we'd started this, the first time I'd heard that uncertainty in his voice. And yet it didn't stop him. It didn't stop any of this. I reached up, pulling him down to me again, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that was full of everything I couldn't say. It wasn't just about the physical pull, the desire. It was about what we had built up to in this moment, about everything that was left unspoken between us. There was no turning back. Not for him. Not for me. We had crossed the line and now we would see where it would take us. By the time dinner rolled around, everything had shifted. The tension between us was palpable, like an invisible thread pulling us closer, tighter, wrapping itself around us with each passing minute. I could feel it in the air, thick and charged with unsaid words. Every glance more than just a glance, every movement more than just a movement. This was no longer just a meal. It had turned into something else entirely, something we could no longer ignore, no longer deny. I set the table with deliberate care, the clink of the silverware, the soft rustle of the linen napkins, all feeling more out of place than they should. I poured the wine, red, dark, full-bodied. The kind of wine that lingered on the tongue and left a warmth that spread through the chest. The glass shimmered in the dim light. But there was nothing in it to calm the restlessness that seemed to pulse through me, as if the very air was vibrating with the weight of everything unsaid. I heard the faint sound of footsteps before they appeared in the doorway. Jake, Rick, and Tyler, each one of them walking in with a mix of uncertainty and anticipation. They moved like they weren't entirely sure what they were walking into but knew enough to feel the pull. The game had already begun. The stakes were rising and the rules had long since been blurred. Jake entered first, his eyes flicking over the room, then locking onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach tighten. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. The smile was polite, forced, like he was trying to convince himself more than anyone else that everything was fine. But his gaze lingered too long, searching for answers he wasn't sure he was ready to hear. Rick followed, his presence more imposing than I remembered. There was a quiet tension in his posture, an unreadable expression that seemed to mask something deeper, something more dangerous. His eyes briefly met mine, a flicker of something there, something complicated and raw, before he looked away. It wasn't the usual dominance or control he exuded. This was uncertainty, mixed with a hint of frustration. Something had shifted in him too. And then Tyler, always the quiet one, stepped in last. He didn't speak, didn't need to. His expression was unreadable. But his eyes never left me. He was the most cautious, the one who didn't want to get too involved, yet he was just as drawn into the situation as the others. His gaze, though softer than Rick's or Jake's, carried a weight of its own, a quiet calculation, as though he were deciding if he should even be here at all. I smiled, welcoming them into my home as though nothing had changed, nothing had shifted. The charade felt hollow though. I could see it in their eyes, the way their gazes flicked over me, the way their hands twitched almost imperceptibly at their sides. They were all aware of it, just like I was. The unspoken tension filled the room, thicker than any words could capture. I could feel their eyes on me as I moved around the table, setting down the last of the wine glasses, arranging the plates. The act of setting the table felt more like preparing for a battle than a dinner. There was a palpable heaviness in the air, a sense that none of us were truly at ease. But I kept moving, forcing myself to act as though nothing had changed, as if this was just another evening. But deep down, I knew that the moment we sat down, the game would continue. Dinner began in its usual fashion. But it wasn't the same. There was no easy conversation, no casual chatter to fill the spaces between bites. Every word felt measured, every laugh too forced, every gesture too careful. Jake kept glancing at me, his smile slipping a little more each time. Rick, though quieter than usual, seemed to be watching everything with a critical eye, and Tyler's silences were loud, as if his mind was somewhere far away, evaluating all of us. None of us could shake the feeling that something huge was about to unfold. The tension was almost unbearable. I could feel it in my chest, a tightness that wouldn't let up. It was as if we were all balancing on the edge of something, and I knew that at any moment, one of us would take the first step over the edge. But no one moved. Not yet. Not until the moment was right. The meal continued barely. The food was good, the wine was smooth, but the words that should have filled the air were trapped. Each bite felt like an intrusion into the silence, and each sip of wine seemed to make everything heavier. The little gestures, the way we passed the bread, the way we filled our glasses, none of it felt natural anymore. It was all a performance, one that we were all playing our part in, but the roles had shifted without any of us realizing it. I watched them all, trying to read their expressions, their body language. Jake was still watching me, but now I saw something else in his eyes, something almost desperate. There was a flicker of frustration there, like he was waiting for me to do something, to make a move, to decide what came next. His hand rested on the table, his fingers tapping nervously. Rick was quieter now, but his attention never wavered. He studied me like he was looking for something, like he expected me to reveal some part of myself that I hadn't yet shown. There was something in the way he was sitting tense on edge that suggested he was as unsure as the rest of us. But there was still that underlying control in the way he held himself. His silence was more dangerous than any of their words. Every glance he threw my way seemed to carry some kind of judgment, like he was weighing me, trying to figure out where I stood in all of this. He was the wild card, the one whose reaction I couldn't predict. And me? I sat there, forcing a smile, keeping my composure, pretending that everything was normal. But inside, I could feel my heart racing. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. I knew that what happened next would change everything. The lines between us had already blurred. And now we were just waiting for the final push, the moment that would send us all over the edge. Dinner went on as usual, but it wasn't the same. The game had started, and none of us knew how it would end. Each of us played our part, but the outcome was uncertain. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't just about dinner anymore. It was about control. It was about power. It was about something far deeper than any of us had anticipated when we walked through that door. But I knew one thing, it was only just beginning. And I was ready for whatever came next. I wasn't sure who would break first or what would happen when the walls finally came down, but I was ready. Whatever the game was, I was in it now. And there was no turning back.